we kind of do ourselves a disservice because we make ourselves believe in this story that we are not good enough, because the minute we reach a certain milestone, a certain goal, whether it is, like I said, losing that 10 pounds, hitting a PR in the gym, I want you to ask yourself, take a second, audit this. You could write it down if you want to. You could just kind of sit with it for a minute. If you're in the car, don't write it down. Just think about it. But I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time you reached a goal and just celebrated it? Like, period, full stop, didn't even think about in the moment of that celebration setting the next goal.
Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What is up, FYX listeners? Welcome back to not only our latest episode of the FYX podcast, but episode 200. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and it's a milestone episode. So if you've been around for the first 100 and maybe the next 50 after that, and now episode 200, you know what I love to do when we dive into milestone episodes, and that's take some time to sit and reflect and think about where the heck have we been, me, you, the listener, the journey that we've been on together over the course of the last however many episodes. 200. As I sat down to record this, I went for a walk. I kind of shared with other people in my family, hey, I'm reaching episode 200. What do you think that I should talk about? I really sat with this one for a little bit in comparison to when we got to episode 100. I really feel like at that time I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to say by the time we reach episode 100 of what I wanted to reflect on. And at the time, I also would argue that, just objectively speaking, I was not as skilled of a podcaster as I am right now today. Double the episodes, double the chances, double the minutes, more than that, because it's not like every episode's the same exact number of minutes each time, but that's more opportunities for transformation on your fitness journey, on your mindset, but also me as a person and the way I articulate myself and the experiences that I have in life and what I choose to share and what I glean from those lessons that not only I've been through, but our clients have been through, and being able to share on that journey. It kind of felt a little bit overwhelming, not in the sense of like, oh my God, like I don't know what to talk about, but more in the sense of, wow, we've been through so much. And yet, and this is going to become the topic of the rest of this episode, we're only just getting started. Because the minute I thought about the fact that, like, damn, we got to 200, for a split second, I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. 200 episodes, 200 moments of consistency. I mean, we've been at this almost 5 years at this rate. It'll be 5 years come December of 2025. That's a long ass time. A whole lot can happen in 5 years. So if you've been here from day one, or maybe you jumped in early, thank you. If you are just diving in and just meeting us for the first time, I'm so happy you're here. Shout out to whoever introduced this podcast to you and making you a fan of the FYX within the next 30 minutes. I'm sure of it. But a lot happens in life in that time. And I'm very proud to have made the decision to document the last 5 years of my brain, essentially, and what I've been through by recording week after week and sitting down and having amazing conversations and getting to meet so many people. I feel so much smarter as a result of the commitment to this show, because it gives me a chance to interview amazing people who know a whole lot more about whatever topic, anything from relationships to supplements, to your own nutrition, to your mindset, to happiness. We've had so many different types of episodes and guests on the show, but also it's been the one thing in my life that, especially as I do these solo episodes, has given me a reason to pause, to reflect, to take space, and then to think about all the thoughts I'm having inside of my head and arguably synthesize them rather than getting on here and just saying whatever's on my mind. And yes, a lot of the time, I would say 99% of the solo episodes that I create for all of you, because I desire them to be off the cuff, authentic, genuine, a much preferred word, to what's actually happening in my day to day and me kind of processing those things in real time, there is a lot of the let me just turn on the mic and riff kind of scenarios, but that doesn't come without me taking the time at some other point in my day, in my week, in my month to actually take a step back and consider like what the heck went on, because days go by, weeks go by, months go by, and I know for so many of you that listen to this show, you resonate with this feeling of like, wait, I blinked and the next month happened, or wait, I blinked and now we're halfway through this year. Like we're about to hit May. I feel like it was truly just yesterday when we were in April of 2024 and I was in the thick of my series on all of the lessons I've learned through my 20s as I step into age 30. And now like 31 is seconds around the corner. My birthday's in a couple weeks. So in thinking through that, it got me really kind of jamming on this idea of the platitude that is trust the process and enjoy the journey. And I am saying that in a purposely facetious tone because I caught myself doing this as I thought about the milestone that is episode 200. And I catch every single one of our clients inside of the Fitness Fix doing this on the regular. And I know that as you listen to this, whether you are a current client, a former client, or have been on any sort of fat loss journey or health journey in the last 2 months, 6 years, 10 years, I don't care how long, 30 years of your life, you have done this to yourself. And it's this thought that the minute you reach a certain milestone, like in this case, episode 200, and you know I'm about to go here with the fat loss analogy, so buckle up, I should say. You know that the minute you've lost 10 pounds, you've done two things. First, you come up with a reason why that's not good enough. Shout out to my high achievers out there. I see you. 2, you then shift the goalpost. I did it the minute I sat down to record this because I thought to myself, is 200 like worth commemorating in any kind of way? Is 200 that big of a milestone? Is it really that big of a deal? Because I have a vision for myself to get to episode 750, to get to episode 1000, and to just keep going and going. What's more is I don't have an end destination in sight. And this is where I'll kind of say this analogy between podcasting and fat loss kind of deviates, is that it's not like I'm setting a goal number of episodes and saying I'm stopping once I get to this point, because I'm not sure what the day looks like that I would even decide like, oh, I don't have space for the FYX podcast anymore, because I love doing this every single week. I've learned a lot about how to execute it more efficiently. I've been in a season recently where I'm questioning what angle I want to focus on inside of this podcast, because as many of you know, in starting a second business, I often feel like there's so much to cover on this show, but I also realize that that audience can kind of deviate a little bit. So does that mean a second podcast? Maybe not anytime soon. Got a whole lot on my plate. But does that mean transitioning the focus of this podcast? I think for now, what I've really kind of settled into is the fact that because the person that we work with inside of the Fitness Fix has really high goals for themselves professionally, whether that is in the form of starting their own business, running multiple businesses, or juggling both a big career and managing their household, being a parent, being the best partner that you possibly can be. I really do feel that I've found this sweet spot of being able to talk a lot about my journey. And I plan to continue to share more of this just as it unfolds in the next 6 months of growing business number 2 in the context of how does that then impact my own fat loss goals, my own relationship to food, my own experience with the gym. And if you didn't catch last week's episode where I talked about managing my own goals in like an especially busy season of life, I would encourage you to listen to it because I got a lot of great feedback on that one. Had clients specifically message me and just be like, it was so helpful to hear you say that. One, because we know that you're in the thick of it with us too. And that's so relatable. And I thank you for seeing me in that place of vulnerability of me sharing that, but also trying to provide the solutions inside of it. It's like, yeah, I have a hard time too, but at the same time, I know that in order to lead by example, that looks like opening up about this, but giving you the exact tangible, like precise steps that I am taking to still make sure my health and fitness are a priority, even if my physique and like my specific physique goals might look different in this exact season. At the same time, though, what I think it also just made me think about was the fact that like we're so quick to not feel satisfied. And that's why I said shout out to my overachievers, because I'm sitting here being like, oh yeah, it's cool I got to episode 200, but like, does that really mean anything because I want to get to episode 750? Yeah, but I could say the same thing by the time I get to episode 1000. And it does mean a whole lot because of what I just mentioned. It's like so much in your life can happen over the course of 5 years. And while I'm not one to often go back and listen to podcast episodes, I do think about this concept of leaving some kind of legacy and knowing that these recordings will live beyond me. And there may even be a point in my own life when I do sit down and go back and listen to these episodes. And I'll be so glad that I did this for no other reason than just being able to document like what the heck went on April, whatever the date is, 2025. And maybe even laugh and have perspective of like, wow, these are the things that I was concerned about. These are the things that were coming up in society around health and wellness. And it's kind of like this really cool time capsule that we're building. So I appreciate you for being a part of this, because all of you, even if you're not physically on the other side of this microphone with me sitting down for an interview, you being in my DMs, you being a client of the Fitness Fix and actually sharing with me like what challenges you and what you're excited about, what you're confused by, what goals you've set for yourself as it relates to your fat loss, you too have contributed and continue and will continue to contribute to this time capsule that is this podcast. And I love that. So we're going to keep on keeping on. But we also are going to acknowledge the fact that we kind of do ourselves a disservice because we make ourselves believe in this story that we are not good enough, because the minute we reach a certain milestone, a certain goal, whether it is, like I said, losing that 10 pounds, hitting a PR in the gym, I want you to ask yourself, take a second, audit this. You could write it down if you want to. You could just kind of sit with it for a minute. If you're in the car, don't write it down. Just think about it. But I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time you reached a goal and just celebrated it? Like period, full stop, didn't even think about in the moment of that celebration, setting the next goal. I got nothing. I'm being quiet on purpose because I am so guilty of doing this, to the point where we all shift the goal line so often, and it's a double-edged sword because I could sit here for the next 12 minutes and tell you why I don't think that's a bad thing, because being that inspired by whatever it is that you accomplish that you then want to seek the next challenge. Well, I mean, shit, that's like the perfect recipe for somebody who's ridiculously successful in their life. But then the question becomes is like, is that at the expense of your happiness? Is that at the expense of you trying to operate from this constant narrative that like you need to prove yourself to who? To you, to other people, to a past version of yourself? Is that the energy? I don't think it should be. But I say that as somebody who's operated in that energy before. That was actually something that came up when I considered like, what do I want to talk about for episode 200? How have I evolved as a person and grown as a person in the last 5 years? And when I think back to 2 years ago, and especially like 4, at the time when I was in the thick of thinking that going back to a corporate job was the route for me, I had quit what I expected to be like my dream fitness position. I had taken the past year and worked in the fitness industry, a pivot from being in finance. And I thought about going back into finance. This is all on the heels of the pandemic. So the job market looked very unpredictable and very uncertain. And the more I sat and interviewed with people for different job positions, ranging from finance to marketing to advertising, like I don't even know how many jobs I applied to. I talked to recruiters. I got advice from people of like how to tell your story, how to position your resume. And the one thing that kept getting under my skin again and again and again was, you look confused based on your resume. You've switched jobs, quote unquote, too many times. And there's a little piece of me that right now would love to go back to those people who said that and say, I guess the whole confusion didn't actually turn out to be a problem for me because I have a whole lot to show for it. This podcast, the Fitness Fix, now the Clarity Collective, all of the individuals that we continue to impact through both of those companies, the audience here, those of you who I haven't even met that listen to this show, and hopefully like you could be out here listening to this. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show, if you've lost like 10 to 15 pounds, even 5 pounds, integrating some of the things that I have brought up that our guests have shed light on in the last few years, like that's amazing. And I want you to know how happy I am for you, even if I don't know who you are. And it's that second part that actually trumps why I've moved so far beyond that little voice in my head that's like, haha, we proved all those people wrong. The people who labeled you as confused, the people who told you that you were going to have a difficult road ahead. And I did have a difficult road for a while, but I can look back on that now and recognize that the reason why I had a difficult road was because I allowed the narrative that was being projected to me to become my reality. Meaning when someone told me that I was confused, I allowed myself to actually be confused. And I allowed myself to probably show up. Like if I wish I had these interviews recorded as much as I'm saying, I love how much I have this podcast documented, because I probably spoke in a way that I didn't seem sure of myself, because intrinsically, like that was the deeper subconscious story that I was operating on, and therefore how I moved through the world. And eventually in moving past that, it initially turned into this, let me prove them wrong. And then I would say between the end of 2023, getting fired from my last fitness job and going on a pretty deep self-development journey last year and having that exploration, working with another type of coach to dig into some of that, and also talking about it on the show, again, having the space to be able to record these episodes, choosing to show up every single week and just talk about these things, and hopefully inviting you to examine these things in your own life, maybe talk about it with other people. If you're a client of the Fitness Fix, coming back to somebody like myself, coming back to Alyssa and me, and just like saying, hey, here's what resonated. Like, here's how this is showing up in my life. Like, that's the domino effect that I want from this show, that I don't even need to know if it's happening, but that's the energy that I'm now operating from, of like, it doesn't matter about proving those people wrong. What really matters is that like, I am so much more sure of myself and confident and certain that all the things that didn't make sense, the confusion, the uncertainty, was a necessary part of the path. And as I was thinking about this, the good old adage of hindsight's 2020 came up. And ironically, 2020 was the year of so much of this uncertainty and discomfort and like not being able to sit in that unfolded. And then it was really tested again in 2023. But the way I came out of like my decision in 2020 to leave the job, move, walk away from the relationship, and all of those massive shifts, and then sit in that uncertainty, versus when the uncertainty was handed to me when I was let go from a position, was like two totally different versions of myself. It was still the common thread of like, hey, there's this opportunity here. Like the people who didn't believe in you, who didn't accept you for those job positions, who sent you the rejection, versus the people who kind of said to you like, oh, we don't believe in your business. Like, good luck. There's always that little piece of me. And I don't think this is a bad side to have for anybody to possess, and hear me when I say this, because it's done a lot for me in my life professionally. That was always like, I'm going to show them and I'm going to prove them that they're wrong. And now it's just kind of got me to a place where I don't really care about proving them wrong, because like deep down, I've always had this pride, and the actual story that I have for myself is like not caring about what other people think. And the more I've been able to unpack that in working with somebody to help ask me these questions and really kind of sit with some of these concepts and then think about them, the more I realize that like, if you operate from this energy of wanting to prove somebody wrong, but you also claim that you don't care about what other people think, those two things can inherently not be true at the same time. And it's beautifully summed up in just saying it's about letting go. And I could see that along the podcast journey, because the podcast journey, letting go inside of the podcast journey, has looked like at episode 45 or 50, I would have been literally genuinely afraid to do a solo episode like this one, when I first started doing solo episodes, I had my phone, and yes, I still keep notes, but like I literally had my phone glued next to me, and I was over analyzing the fact that I was going to be looking at my phone on camera. Whereas now I just turn this bad boy on, turn on Zoom, turn on my camera, make sure all the sound is connected, and we rock. I've got a few notes in front of me right now. I haven't really looked at them once. I read through them, and it was basically just like a brain dump. That hot tip for anybody out there who is a podcaster or has to present often, or, you have some sort of like speaking engagement involved in your career in some way, even if you're a teacher and you're speaking to your students every single day. I am obsessed with using the microphones inside of Claude and ChatGPT, to the more common AI softwares, and just talking to it, stream of consciousness, and basically explaining to it, like, here are the thoughts rolling in my head. Help me turn this into an outline for XYZ presentation. In this case, the podcast episode. So do with that what you will, but that's one of my hacks in helping me kind of make sure that I get across the main points that I want to get across, but still deliver it to you in a way that's not scripted and is just me and you. Like, we're on FaceTime having a conversation. And while I don't get the feedback back from not seeing your expression or hearing you, if you're nodding your head right now, hopefully you're smiling and hearing this. Like, that's the environment that I try to create from these shows. And even with a guest too, like, not making it this formal conversation, just something where you as a listener feel like you're kind of like eavesdropping in on a conversation that, just so matter of fact, happens to be able to help you too, because you can glean something from it as well. And so that's where this whole concept of trusting the process really comes together as like a second layer, I think is the best way to say it, around this idea of like shifting the goalpost. Because in the last few minutes and me reflecting on like, okay, well, here's where I was when I was at episode 100 in the way that I delivered these episodes versus where I am now at 200, I can appreciate the growth that took. And here's the part that's so key to your fat loss journey: the number of reps it took for me to get to the second that I am at right now today, where I can just turn on the mic and go for it and be happy with the product on the other side that feels very genuine to me. That's the same experience and necessity that we go through of being the person who starts in the gym curling 5-pound dumbbells and then eventually gets to 10 and then to 15 and goes from 5 reps up to 10 reps up to 15 reps. And as you gradually continue to increase weight, that's the same sentiment and thought process that's required for the person who is committed to learning how to track their food, but on day one of that tracking journey feels like it's taking them 30 minutes versus by the time you get to day 60, day 120, and eventually, a year in, it's just literally a part of your identity. So many people, our clients that walk away from the Fitness Fix and are at the place where they're ready to navigate this journey on their own, tell us, like, when they first come into the program, they're like, I don't see food tracking as like a long-term thing for me. And that's totally cool. Like, I want you to eat intuitively. I don't track my food incessantly all the time. But 9 times out of 10, by the time we hit that mark where they've officially graduated from the program and they're like, I got this, I'm doing this on my own, 9 out of 10 of those people are like, I'm not going to stop food tracking. It's my identity now. And it's so easy. That's such a win for me. I had a client go through an exit interview with us just last week. And she said to me, like, one of the biggest takeaways that she got from the experience, she's worked with us very, just fully invested in the process for the last year. So not just worked with us, not just went through the motions, but like 100% committed to these efforts, was the feedback that we taught her why we do the things that we do. And when we do the things that we do are intentional. That dieting is about seasons that align with whatever else is going on in your life. That those two things have to be integrated, not this whole bullshit of my fitness and nutrition goals are over here and my life happens in a box over here. And because my life happens in a box over here, I'm just going to put my head down because I want to get to those nutrition goals. I want to see that 10-pound fat loss as fast as possible. How's that working out for you? Because if you haven't realized it yet, if you are struggling to lose weight, I promise that is the formula, that is the narrative that you have had in your head for God knows how long, that is now ultimately preventing you from seeing long-term results, from getting you to a place where you're not just on this journey, this chase of losing, but you are on this just like very steady road of actually maintaining and realizing that this doesn't have to be this like intense effort all the time just to get to some end result that you're going to undo because you took a really resistant approach to getting there. If you want fat loss, you should be chasing ease. If you want fat loss, you should be chasing simplicity. And I would say the same thing goes for podcasting, because if you want to show up and record a podcast every single week, most people don't really think about what actually goes into podcasting. And I caution fellow coaches and business owners who are jumping into wanting to start a podcast whenever they ask me, because having had a podcast for a while now, people always ask, like, what do you recommend when first starting? And it's knowing what you're signing up for. Is that if you want to be successful in podcasting, however you define that, but let's say the baseline definition of success is growing your audience, maybe eventually getting some sponsors, using it as a way to bring in more clientele into your community. We really rely on it for the latter, for the Fitness Fix. And I'm going to get to that towards the end of this, because that's something that I've learned along the journey. Is you need to be prepared, and you need to be a couple steps ahead, as in a couple episodes in the bank, because you don't know what's going to come at you during a week. And it's not that simple to just turn your microphone on and just like immediately record and think that that's going to happen every week, unless you take a simplified approach in that you dedicate and carve out the time for it on a weekly basis. And you think about the ways that you can make it as simple as possible, like having an editor, or not putting this pressure on yourself to edit out every last little nitty gritty detail. Because there were points when I first started podcasting and I was still getting comfortable talking on here that I would sit and I would look for all the ums and the ands. I have a tendency, I know this about myself because I've listened to so many episodes on that, cutting room floor, so to speak, that I'm less of a like kind of girl and more of a and I use it as a bridge to connect to the next thought. But at the end of the day, nobody's listening to that component of it and that little detail of it as much as I am. And hopefully, now that I called that out, you're not going to look for it in future episodes, because if you do, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I don't want that to distract from the actual message. And the point is, it doesn't distract from the actual message, because that's not why you're here. You're not here to look for those things the way I am. But having this approach to just remembering that, like, your whole point of being a podcast host is to get a message across that's going to provide value to people. You have to ask yourself, do you have the space in your routine, in your schedule every single week to be able to show up and do that? It doesn't need to be this massive production. It doesn't have to be in a studio. One thing that I've reflected on in the journey to episode 200 is, like, I've recorded this podcast in 4 different places at this point. Multiple apartments, my parents' house, in a studio, in other studios, like probably 5+ if I count when I've traveled and recorded in other places too. But the real premise of it is you have something to say that you can articulate well, and then you're going to show up and do it every single week, no matter what. I've shown up on weeks that I've been sick and felt super sniffly into the mic. I've shown up on weeks that I had a lot going on in my personal life, breakups, feeling distracted, feeling overwhelmed in my business from making different decisions with our coaching staff. Still showed up and recorded a podcast episode. So it's taught me how to be really flexible. It's taught me how to be nimble, but it's also taught me to just understand that the guiding light, the principle that's going to help me continue to show up no matter what all those other variables are, is being really connected to the fact that we are here to deliver a perspective, to share somebody else's journey, like to give somebody access to this platform and talk about whatever their area of expertise is, to give you more education. If we can always operate from that place, it does feel simple to show up on here every single week. It is the reason why I love this so much. And that's one of the things that I want to highlight when somebody tells you, like, trust the process. I said it facetiously earlier because as a coach, I hate saying that to clients. I know what it feels like when you're like, I'm down 10 pounds and I just want to lose another 10, or I want to lose another 15. And now here Krysta is as the coach telling me, hey, we want to consider this aspect of our schedule, or hey, we weren't as consistent with our tracking this week. And then all of a sudden you feel like you took this massive step forward only to take 2 steps back because something came up at work. One of your kids got sick, you got sick and you fell off of tracking. You went on a trip and you fell like out of your routine with what you were choosing to eat. And then you came home and you didn't get to the grocery store, and that's how that snowballs. And all of a sudden 3 weeks go by and you feel like you stalled out. That's the reality of the process that I don't know about you, but I don't feel like trusting that. No way. That doesn't sound like something that I can get behind with trusting. That sounds like a lot to think about. That sounds like a lot of moving parts. Well, That's the whole reason why working with a nutrition coach and working with coaches like ours inside of the Fitness Fix is going to get you to your forever results much faster, because we are giving you the tools and the perspective to teach you how to avoid the 3-week slump that comes off of falling out of your routine due to a trip, to get past the mental roadblocks that is you seeing a ton of progress week after week after week, and then all of a sudden the scale stalling out. Because we know that that's to be expected. And we know from our own journeys as coaches, like, and as not just practitioners, but like consumers of working inside of our own nutrition goals, whether that's building muscle, losing fat, hitting PRs in the gym, training for a race, just wanting to feel a little bit more confident in the first outfit that we try on in the morning. We get it because we've lived it, but then we also have hundreds of stories from all of the clients that we've supported in the last few years to be able to compile them and say, hey, just because the way like Krysta or Alyssa resonated with something doesn't mean that that's going to hit for a client. And that's what's been so awesome about having the space to podcast, because it's made me realize that when we have lots of conversations with lots of different clients, if they're not all able to connect with each other, we do create opportunity for connection by having group coaching calls twice a month and really encouraging our community to come to them, because we want all of you to hear that a lot of you are going through the same things. But again, the podcast has actually allowed me to sit down and synthesize this story over here from this client and this story over here from that client, and then bring to you, whether you're actively seeking a nutrition coach or whether you're choosing to be on this journey yourself, whether you are a current client of ours, whether you're a past client of ours, give you a way to get extra access to us and get free information that is, if you implement it, I'm so 100% sure, because I got a whole lot of receipts from a whole lot of client transformations to prove it. And that's where I'm pulling this perspective from, to get you the results that you want, whether you're actively a part of the Fitness Fix or, again, like I said, navigating this journey on your own. And I take a lot of pride, and like I feel honored to be able to be that safe space, that trusted voice in somebody's ear. Any of you out there listening, that you come back to these episodes every single week looking for that. And I've seen how our clients, it seriously, like I already said this once in this recording, but I'm saying it again. It means so much to me when somebody sends me a message saying, not only did they love the episode, but they specifically loved this aspect, or this point that you made resonated with me, or I really appreciated when you shared this experience that you went through and I had no idea that that was going on. And I appreciate that, because it just reaffirms like, oh, that's an area we should talk about more. And oh, that's an area that we should double down on, because the extra 40 minutes that you hear from me here gets to become an extra coaching session and an extra chance for us to connect, because then you bring it back to me and you're like, here's what I learned for this. And I'm like, hell yeah, here's how we can then expand on this coaching moment to make it personal to you, the person who sent me that message. So keep coming through, please, because I really do love that. And know that what I just highlighted in saying like those aspects of the journey that are the feedback or the ability to reflect and synthesize and know that all of this is recorded and having a chance to look back on it. It's so important to take the time to think about those gratifying aspects of it, because that is what does allow you to trust the process. And that is what really allows you to appreciate the journey. It also makes it okay for you to then want to shift the goalposts and get to the next level and get to the next level after that and so on. So in a way, what's been unexpected for me is like when I think about the reasons that I started the Fitness Fix, and I think about like what went through my mind almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago at this point, to be a little more exact, of where I saw this podcast going. I didn't expect it to be, more like even more of a coaching tool. And really, I would say like a retention tool to just help you get the best transformation possible. I just woke up and was like, a lot of people are podcasting. I feel qualified to podcast because I like to talk, let's be honest. And because I have a journalism degree. So I saw it as this chance to interview people. And I was like, I'm going to interview, and that's going to be my focus. And I'm going to connect with really cool people. But even in the last month, I've mentioned this as I've had like solo episode after solo episode back to back, whereas the beginning of the year, we were a little heavier on the interviews. And every few months when I go through these cycles of like a bunch of interviews in a row versus a bunch of solo episodes in a row, I can never actually decide what I really like better. And truthfully, I'm not just saying that to say that. Like I learn different things. So I enjoy different aspects from each interaction, whether that interaction be me and just the camera and the microphone, thinking about how you are going to process this the week later, or whether it is sitting down with somebody and getting to have that conversation back and forth with them as a fellow nutrition coach, a fellow business owner, a mom, somebody who's had a really amazing transformation on their journey, somebody who is just like an absolute expert guru when it comes to metabolism and so many different things, and experts like on happiness and everything and relationships, as I've touched on already. But I think for me, in reflecting on that, I have a little bit of a bias to the solo episodes only because it's just my chance for all of that to come together. And there's a therapeutic and cathartic aspect to that, but it's also what allows me to actually enjoy the process, because it's me out loud synthesizing these thoughts to then hopefully encourage you to go take a certain action. And more importantly, it's the proof, and you're hearing me do this in real time, find the meaning in this consistent action, because doesn't get a whole lot more consistent than showing up for an episode every single week. It's creating connections, doesn't get more connection based than me and you and me having the chance to talk to you out there, or, of course, connecting with a guest. It's about recognizing the growth in yourself. And I talked about my energy shifts and the way I operate today versus how I did 2 years ago, and then versus how I did even 5 years ago, almost 6. We get to bring that all together right here. And so what I want to challenge you to do as we move into episode 201 and beyond, or in your case, as we maybe move into the 2.0 version of yourself, or the 3.0 version of yourself, if that looks like chasing another 10 pounds of fat loss, if that looks like having the confidence in the next 7 to 8 weeks to put on a bathing suit that you haven't worn in a year, in 2 years, in 6, and you getting up tomorrow and actually going to the gym like you said you were going to. We could start small, people. Find the enjoyment in that, because the enjoyment doesn't actually come from the process itself. I'm not asking you to find the enjoyment of like making the decision to put on the bathing suit, or making the decision to put on your sneakers and go for that workout, or even go for that walk. But the real enjoyment is that the process actually reveals to you who you're becoming, because you're becoming the person who has the confidence to wear the bikini. You're becoming the person who makes good on the promises they set for themselves when they set that alarm to go off at 6 and not snooze it come morning. You're becoming the person who actually enjoys tracking their food and sees it as such a helpful tool that's literally a part of your day, versus something that's this thing you have to do in order to get to some end result. Because when it comes to fitness and nutrition, much like the fact that I don't know how long I'm going to go on with this podcast, and right now it's looking like a long time, there is no end goal with this. If you want your life to feel full and you to live for a long time and live in a way that you can still move your body and you can be healthy and you can say yes to the martini and yes to the dessert and have the girl dinner with the fries and the Caesar salad, or if you just want to know that you're going to be able to pick your grandkid up off the floor or get down with them and stand back up without having the aches and the pains, then you have to enjoy the process. But instead, let's make that a little bit more meaningful by saying that you're enjoying the process, because when you look back, you're able to see that the process, the choice of taking consistent action, is what is going to allow you to see a different version of you, is what is going to allow you to unlock this other version of yourself. So while this isn't really just about a milestone episode of reaching number 200, it is the journey that I've been on with all of you, the front row seat that I've invited you to take on not just my own journey, but our clients' journeys, and all of us having the opportunity to show up every single week Because, hey, I know that there are some of you that listen to this podcast while going for a walk. So if this is like your date with me and the podcast is your reason to get outside and go for a walk, I'm so freaking proud of you. And I just want to remind you that small, consistent actions add up to something really big. Because if I hadn't chosen on a weekly basis to take these relatively small in the moment, but now much bigger actions that have stacked into 200 plus episodes, we wouldn't even be sitting here right now. So while I see my podcast as really a lifetime pursuit that maybe the subject matter evolves in that lifetime, your health is a lifetime pursuit too. So let's continue to act like it together. If you're on our email list, I want to draw in one other little story that I shared last week that I think resonated for a lot of people. So by the time this episode drops, it'll be 2 weeks ago. But Rory McIlroy won the Masters in golf a few weeks back. And he's shown up 17 times to the Masters. 17. Didn't win until number 17. He's won a lot of other things along the way. So sure, there's lots of ways that he could appreciate the journey. But this was also the first time after nearly a decade of being this close to this happening where he won a Grand Slam. So he won multiple tournaments and he had gotten 2 out of the 3 that he needed, but it came down to the Masters and that's where it didn't happen for him. 10 years of trying to pursue that, 17 attempts of getting that green jacket, and he did it. Imagine if he had quit on time 14, because arguably that would have felt like a lot of tries. Imagine if he quit on time 7. So when we think about this lifetime pursuit for ourselves, I bring in somebody like him because I want to remind you, as I did in that email, and hint, hint, if you're not on the Fitness Fix email list, I don't know what you're doing. So you should get yourself on there. The link to access it, we'll drop it in the show notes. If you can treat yourself like that kind of athlete, to me, you owe it to yourself to treat yourself with as much respect. It's not just discipline. It's not just seriousness, but I think it's respect of what a pro athlete does to their body for the way that they approach their food, their nutrition, their sleep, their training. You don't have to do it to the nth degree because I understand that your goal is not the same as theirs, but the deeper meaning, what it signifies, like we were just saying, what the process signifies, what it means to operate like an athlete, to me, that signifies you having the utmost respect for yourself, your health, and the rest of your life. So let's go do it. As always, with the sign off, yes, I do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. But I also want you to know that I'm looking forward to continuing to see where we all keep on going together. So with that, I'll catch you guys next week.